I want to start with Brexit, if I might. I want to get your sense of where we are in terms of the mood music amongst your colleagues within the Eurozone. Is the EU prepared to walk away from the trade talks with the UK if the UK does not back down on pursuing its internal markets bill?
Well, the very high level of solidarity within the European Union and amongst my colleagues here in Berlin today continues to be palpable, continues to be at the highest level. The European Union is not walking away from this process. But what the European Union is making very, very clear is we have an agreement that protects the Good Friday Agreement and also stands by the single market, which is at the heart of the European project and also a core foundation of the Irish economy and of our country. And in order to look at other agreements in the future, we have to honour agreements that have already been made. And this is an agreement that was made by the British government this time nearly a year ago. It was an agreement that was made by the current British government, and the prerequisite of any future agreement must be honouring agreements that have been just made.
The basis for current and future agreements is trust. How damaged has trust been?
Trust has been damaged as a result of this. It's been damaged because of the nature of the announcement. It's been damaged because we have a process underway that was always predicated on an agreement that was just made. But that being said, the European Union and Ireland is very clear that we want to engage. We recognise all that is at stake. We recognise the value of an orderly, good agreement in the future between the United Kingdom and the European Union. And Ireland, the European Union, will not be found wanting in work, in creativity to find a way forward. But that does all have to have a foundation, and that foundation is honouring agreements made and honouring an agreement that was passed in the House of Commons that looks to get the balance right between protecting the Good Friday Agreement, recognising the desire and democratic will of the British people to leave the European Union, but also standing by the single market, which those of us still in the European Union realise and want to protect because it's so important to our future.
You laid out, though, a really strong case for walking away from the talks if the UK does not back down. You have to have some planning going on in back rooms. What's the contingency plan? What's the scenario where you walk away?
Well, look, from an Irish point of view, we this time again, nearly a year ago, outlined what kind of contingency planning we would have to deal with the consequences of Brexit if agreement could not be found. And within the European Union, my colleagues in all our different member states, for an example, an agreement that was made just before the summer, the agreement that look at how we can create a new budget for the European Union, that agreement had within it ability to put funding in place to deal with the consequences of Brexit for countries that are most affected by it. So we've already done the kind of planning that is needed to deal with the consequences of Brexit, and we stand ready to deal with what those consequences could be. But before we get to that point of having to deal with very, very difficult circumstances, again, I would echo what many other European leaders have said. Let's stand by an agreement that's already in place, and then let's redouble our efforts to put in place and build upon that an agreement that can lead to a good future relationship between the EU and the UK.
Minister, as you say, that is the positive outcome. That is, in many people's minds, the desirable outcome. But it is increasingly possible that we do not get a deal. If it becomes apparent that we are not going to get a deal, is it important who walks out of the talks first?
Look, those are all matters that are a consequence of a decision or a statement that was made by a British minister earlier on in the week. And I think now my views in relation to the consequences of that statement are very, very clear, as are those of the European Union. And as opposed to anticipating what might happen if the situation gets more difficult, let me just make very, very clear that the European Union is ready to engage. The European Commission, key commissioners and representatives travel to London this week to engage. But it is all based on the maintenance of a key assumption that we have, which is if you make an agreement, it will be honoured. And as opposed to anticipating what might happen in an even more difficult situation, let's just go back to where we were, if possible, with an agreement that was made, and let's see if it is possible then to get a relationship that builds upon that.
On the flip side, Minister, Europe is still contending with a resurgence in the virus, plus a stronger euro. Christine Lagarde yesterday seemed to take a back seat in terms of what level the ECB wants the euro at, but Philip Lane has been front and center, worried about the stronger currency. Is the euro too strong right now to help the recovery?
Well, look, as president of the Eurogroup, within our group, we always monitor an array of economic indicators. And of course, one of those is where we are from an exchange rate point of view. In our Eurogroup meeting here today, it was not a topic of discussion, but it's a long-standing view of the Eurogroup that it is so important that an exchange rate reflects the economic fundamentals of the euro area. But it was not the subject of discussion today, and this is a matter that the President Lagarde has already commented on, as has the ECB.
Minister, what is your assessment of where we're going into the autumn? The economic data have improved over the summer. Do you expect that to continue? What is your degree of certainty going into that period?
Well, we are, of course, in an atmosphere at the moment in which there is much uncertainty. The figures that were released by the European Union there a number of weeks ago did point to a decline in income, national income across that period of nearly 12%, and a decrease in employment of nearly 3%, which is affecting so many millions of citizens within the European Union. As we look at where we are at the moment, we have seen evidence of growth, of a rebound now in recent weeks and months. And as we look to the future, we believe it is very possible to build on those signs of recovery, in particular as we move into 2021. But that's why the agreement that has been made by the European Union in relation to the Recovery and Resilience Fund is now so important. Because what the European Union has done is created a new, a very strong economic tool, the purpose of which now is to strengthen the recovery in Europe at a time it will need it the most, which is when we move into 2021 and 2022. So the Eurozone, the European Union, it will recover, and what we have now done through this new economic tool, building on other really important interventions put in place, is give ourselves the ability to drive this recovery at a time when further support for us will be needed.
If there is a second wave, though, and this is the beginning of it, is the Eurogroup going to have to do more than that 750 billion euros?
Well, we believe we have the right tools in place at the moment. We believe the scale of them is right, and we believe the timing of them is right. We did, of course, have a discussion in Eurogroup today regarding the current economic status. And one point that I reiterated in the messages that came out of that euro area discussion is the importance of taking care with the changes, the changing levels of economic support that are there at the moment. We don't want policy cliff edges within Europe at the moment. We don't want the sudden withdrawal of economic supports that are there. What we want to do, and this will take very careful judgment and will take much debate and consultation within the euro area, is get to a point that the changes in level of economic support are in line with, hopefully, an improving recovery. So we believe the use of that judgment, combined with the deployment of the Recovery and Resilience Fund in 2021 and 2022, are the kind of measures that are needed to guide the recovery within the euro area. But as always, we keep all of this under review. We meet every month, and we're all aware of the nature of this recovery, how it's different from other recoveries in the past, and the need to support it.
As Klaus Regling pointed out in your news conference a little earlier on, financial market sentiment towards Europe has improved. How do you sustain that improvement and keep it going? What do you need to do as the Eurogroup?
I think there's three elements for the continued maintenance of this confidence. As Klaus noted earlier on, financial market sentiment towards the euro is strong as a result of the work that has been led by President Christine Lagarde, and also because of the work that has been done at a budgetary level within the European Union. But there are three important elements regarding how we can maintain it. Firstly, the deployment of the Recovery and Resilience Fund, a huge economic tool to support economic recovery. Secondly, looking to make continued and steady progress in relation to the completion of banking union and the acceleration of capital markets union. And thirdly, just to go on back to a point I touched on a moment ago, which is taking care regarding how we change the level of budgetary support and supporting individual member states in making sure they have the right national reform plan for their economy. And as I said, we adjusted and taper it with care in response to what is happening with employment and investment in each economy. And I think within the euro area, as we work to deliver those three important economic policy blocks, it should be the kind of change that is needed to maintain the support that you've noticed.